My wife Claire picked our house because of the roof angle. She said it was perfect for solar panels. She made me promise to build a system that would power our home without needing anyone else. She died 7 months later. I built that system with my own hands. 28 panels, 2 power walls, $38,000, and every wire soldered in memory of the woman who dreamed it up. My daughter Lily called it Mom's Power Plant. Then I found out the HOA president had been stealing from it. A buried cable, running from my garage to hers, charging her white Tesla Model X every single night for 14 months. She didn't ask. She didn't pay. She just took from a widower and his 11-year-old daughter because she'd been HOA president for 9 years, and nobody had ever told her no. But I'm a solar energy engineer. I designed that system down to the last watt, and I had a switch she didn't know about. What would you do if someone stole from your family's legacy? Tell me in the comments. The first time I saw our house on Saguaro Ridge Drive, Claire squeezed my hand so hard I thought she'd crack a knuckle. It was August in Mesa, Arizona. 108 degrees. The realtor was sweating through her blazer, and the sidewalk was hot enough to cook bacon. But Claire stood in that driveway, stared up at the south-facing roof, and said, "That's where the panels go." She was always 3 steps ahead. That was her gift. While I spent my days running wire and sizing inverters for commercial solar installations across Maricopa County, Claire was the one who saw the bigger picture. She wanted a home that didn't need anyone, a house that made its own power, stored its own energy, and never sent a dime to the utility company it didn't have to. We moved into Ridgeline Estates in the spring of 2020. 180 homes, stucco and tile, all desert landscaping, all governed by a homeowners association that have been running the same way for nearly a decade. Claire, Lily, and I unpacked boxes for 3 days straight, while the smell of fresh paint mixed with the dry heat blowing through the open garage door. Claire didn't make it to the 2nd anniversary. Breast cancer took her fast. Diagnosis in October, gone by March. Lily was 9, I was 40. And suddenly that house, the one Claire picked because of the roof angle, felt too quiet and too loud at the same time. I threw myself into the solar project because it was the last thing she asked me to build. 12 kilowatt array, 28 panels, 2 Tesla power walls, a hybrid inverter with battery backup, and a monitoring system I designed myself that tracked every watt produced, stored, and consumed. Total investment, $38,000. I wired every connection with my own hands, soldered every junction, and ran conduit along the attic joists, until my knees were raw from the plywood. The system worked beautifully. On a clear July day, those panels pumped 65 kilowatt hours. The power walls charged full by 2 in the afternoon. By sundown, I had enough stored energy to run the house through the night and still feed surplus back to the grid for credit. Lily called it Mom's Power Plant. I never corrected her. Pamela Stockton showed up on moving day. I was hauling a box of Lily's books up the driveway when a white Tesla Model X pulled to the curb. A woman stepped out like she was arriving at a country club board meeting. Blonde hair pinned tight, white linen blazer over black yoga pants, sunglasses that cost more than my first car. She crossed the lawn without being invited, extended one hand, and delivered a smile that had all the warmth of a fluorescent bulb. "Welcome to Ridgeline. I'm Pamela Stockton. I run things around here," she said it the way a warden says lights out. Within 5 minutes she'd explained approved paint colors, trash can schedules, and the courtesy review she expected before any exterior modifications. Her eyes kept drifting to the solar equipment stacked in my garage. "Solar panels," she said, like the words tasted sour. "We'll need to discuss that." 6 months later, the first violation notice arrived in a manila envelope, stamped with the HOA seal in blue ink. Solar panels create visual disharmony with Ridgeline Estates aesthetic standards. Remove within 30 days or face a $200 per day fine. I checked the CC&Rs cover to cover. No solar restriction, not a single word. Then I checked Arizona law, revised statute section 33-1816, which says a homeowners association cannot prohibit the installation of solar energy devices, period. I sent a certified letter citing both. Pamela withdrew the violation without a word of apology. That night, Hank Prescott knocked on my back door. 68 years old, retired electrician, hands like worn leather gloves. He leaned against the doorframe, looked over his shoulder, and said, "She backed off too fast. That ain't like her. Watch your back, son. I should have listened harder. For the next several months, things were quiet. Pamela waved from her driveway like nothing had happened. She showed up at block parties with wine and small talk, playing the gracious neighbor while her Tesla sat in the garage, charging on power she didn't pay for. I almost convinced myself the violation had been a one-time power play, a warning shot to establish dominance, nothing more. Lily started middle school. I took on 2 new commercial solar projects in Tempe. The system hummed along, and life in Ridgeline felt almost normal. Then, 8 months after I finished the install, I noticed something wrong. I check my solar monitoring app every morning the way some people check the weather. Production, storage, consumption, grid export. 4 numbers that tell me exactly how the system is performing. For 8 months, those numbers had been rock solid. Then one Tuesday morning in November, they weren't. The power walls were draining 40% faster than they should have been. Not a slow drift, a hard, sustained pull. Every night between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., something was drawing 6 to 7 kilowatt hours from my batteries, when my house should have been using 2 to 3. That's more than double what a sleeping household consumes. Something was feeding off my system in the dark. My first instinct was a wiring fault. Maybe a junction overheating, a relay stuck closed, a breaker not tripping properly. I spent all of Saturday crawling through the attic on my hands and knees, checking every terminal, every connection, every splice. Nothing. The inverter logs were clean. Panel output matched design specs to the decimal. The power walls cycled normally during the day. The problem only showed up at night. I lay on the garage floor at 11:30 on a Wednesday, concrete cold against my back, flashlight clenched between my teeth, listening to the low hum of the sub-panel above me. That electrical hum you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. I clamped an ammeter on each circuit one at a time. Kitchen, normal. HVAC, normal. Garage outlets, normal. Then I hit the feed cable that ran along the bottom of the panel and disappeared through the wall toward the property line. 23 amps. Steady. Continuous. No appliance in my house pulled 23 amps at midnight. Nothing even close. I followed the conduit through the drywall, past the water heater, into the back corner of the garage, where the wall met the foundation. The conduit went straight into a hole punched through the concrete block, a hole that didn't appear on any blueprint I'd ever drawn. Sunday morning, I borrowed a spade from Hank and started digging along the fence line between my property and Pamela Stockton's. 8 inches down, the blade hit PVC. White pipe, 2-inch diameter, buried in a clean, straight trench running from my garage wall directly to hers. Inside that pipe was 6-gauge copper wire, properly stripped and terminated on both ends, a 240-volt feed running from my sub-panel into her garage. On her side, the wire connected to a Tesla wall connector mounted behind a storage shelf. I could see the unit through the gap in her fence slats. The charging indicator glowed solid green. This wasn't some extension cord dragged over the fence at midnight. Someone with professional electrical training had punched through my wall, tapped my sub-panel at the breaker, buried the cable in a trench, and wired it into her charging system. Someone had done this carefully, quietly, and completely out of sight. I knelt in the dirt holding that white PVC pipe and felt my pulse pound in my ears. 14 months. She had been draining my solar system for 14 months without asking, without paying, and without a shred of guilt. I did the math that night at my kitchen table, while Lily slept down the hall. A Tesla Model X draws roughly 60 kilowatt hours for a full charge. At 4 to 5 charges per week over 14 months, that's approximately $3,000 in raw electricity. But the real damage ran deeper. Every unnecessary deep discharge cycle shortens Powerwall battery life. At the rate she'd been pulling, she'd burned through nearly $4,000 in accelerated degradation on batteries, designed to last 15 years. Total estimated damage, north of $7,000. Here's something most people don't know. In Arizona, theft of utilities exceeding $1,000 is a Class 6 felony. Not a civil nuisance, not a small claims case, a criminal felony with potential prison time. I brought it up at the next monthly HOA meeting. Carefully, without naming names. I stood up during open comments and said I'd discovered abnormal power consumption on my property and wanted to know if anyone else had noticed unusual electrical behavior near the fence lines. Pamela cut me off before I finished the sentence. If your system can't handle Arizona summers, Mr. Calloway, maybe solar isn't for everyone. The room stayed quiet, A few people shifted in their chairs. Nobody pushed back. 3 days later, a new violation appeared in my mailbox. Garage door observed open during non-approved hours. Fine. $150. That's when I knew for certain. She wasn't just stealing my electricity. She knew I was getting close. And instead of disconnecting that cable and praying I'd let it go, she chose to bury me in paperwork. The violations started arriving like clockwork after that. Week 1. Mailbox paint faded below community standard. Fine. $100. My mailbox was 2 years old and looked exactly like every other one on the street. Week 2. Trash cans, visible from the roadway on a non-collection day. Fine. $100. The cans were inside my side yard behind a 6-foot block wall. You'd need a stepladder and binoculars to see them from the street. Week 3. The pergola I'd built for Lily in the backyard. A simple cedar frame with a canvas shade where she read after school, cited as an unauthorized accessory structure. Fine. $300. Removed within 14 days. I pulled the C, C, and R, S again and cross-referenced every violation. The pergola didn't require approval because it was under the square footage threshold. The trash cans were fully screened per section 4.7. The mailbox matched the approved color in Appendix B. Every citation was either fabricated or selectively enforced. I drove through the neighborhood that weekend with my phone camera running on the dashboard. In 2 hours, I documented 43 properties with the same or worse conditions Pamela had cited me for. Faded mailboxes, trash cans by the curb on the wrong day, garden sheds with no permits. Not a single one had received a violation notice. I knew because I submitted a records request for all enforcement actions in the past 12 months. Mine was the only name that appeared more than once. Most names didn't appear at all. The stack of violation letters on my kitchen counter grew thick enough to prop open a door. The paper edges curled in the afternoon sun that came through the window. Lily noticed. She picked one up, read it, and asked, "Dad, are we breaking the rules?" That question burned hotter than any fine. Hank Prescott invited me over for a beer the following Saturday. We sat on his back patio while the Superstition Mountains turned rust orange in the fading light. The air smelled like mesquite from someone's grill 2 houses down, and the only sound was a quail calling from behind his tool shed. 3 families, Hank said. He held up 3 fingers like he wanted to make sure I counted. The Delgados, the Prestons, the Whitfields, all lived on this street, all got the same treatment you're getting. I asked what happened to them. They sold, every single one, and every single time the house sold below market. Want to guess who bought them? I didn't have to guess. Wade Stockton, Hank said, Pamela's husband, licensed general contractor. He'd buy the property at a discount, renovate it with his crew, and flip it within 6 months. Made $40,000 to $60,000 each time. I watched it happen 3 times in 5 years. The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like aluminum and ash. This wasn't just HOA bullying. This was a business model. Pamela used her position to harass homeowners with manufactured violations until the stress, the fines, and the legal costs made selling easier than fighting. Then Wade swooped in with a lowball offer on a property he knew was worth more. They'd been running this scheme for years. Why didn't anyone report it? I asked. Hank stared at the mountains. Because by the time they figured it out, they were too tired and too broke to fight. And the people who stayed were too scared she'd come for them next. I drove home that night with the windows down, dry desert air hitting my face at 40 miles an hour, and made a decision. I wasn't going to be family number 4. The next morning, I bought 4 Wise security cameras and mounted them at every corner of my property. I created a spreadsheet with columns for date, time, violation type, C, C, and R section cited, whether the violation was legitimate, and a notes field for photographic evidence. I started a separate log tracking identical conditions at other homes, faded paint, visible cans, unpermitted structures, and whether those homes received citations. Then I did something Pamela wouldn't have expected. I walked her property line with a zoom lens and documented everything I could see from the public sidewalk. Her backyard pool had no safety fence, a direct violation of Maricopa County Code. Her storage shed exceeded the setback requirement by 3 feet, and the electrical panel on the side of her house had an unpermitted sub-panel addition that I recognized immediately because I'd seen the other end of it buried under my fence. I saved every photo, every screenshot, every email. I organized them by date in a folder I kept on an encrypted drive. And I didn't tell a soul. Not yet. The next Sunday, I noticed something else. I was walking Lily to the bus stop when I saw Pamela's Tesla parked in the driveway, with the charge port light blinking green. It was 7:15 in the morning. The car had been plugged in all night. I knew because my current transformer had logged a 6-hour pull starting at 11 p.m. 6 hours of my power, flowing through a cable I never authorized, into a car that cost more than most people's annual salary. And the woman who owned it was inside her house drinking coffee, without a care in the world. That image stayed with me. It still does. 3 weeks later, a petition showed up in every mailbox on Saguaro Ridge Drive. The cover page read, Ridgeline Estates Solar Panel Aesthetic Standards Act. The language was dense and bureaucratic, designed to look official and bore anyone who tried to read it carefully. But I read every word, twice. Stripped of the legal padding, it said one thing: no solar panels visible from any street, sidewalk, or neighboring property. Since solar panels go on roofs, and roofs are visible from everywhere, the petition was a total ban, dressed in a blazer. Pamela went door to door. I watched her from my kitchen window one Saturday morning, clipboard under her arm, heels clicking on the hot sidewalk, delivering that politician's smile to every homeowner who answered the bell. She told them solar panels reduced property values by 15%. She told them glare from the panels was a safety hazard. She told them the majority of residents had already expressed concern. Every claim was a lie. Studies from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory showed solar panels actually increased home values by an average of 4%. The glare argument had been dismissed by every court that ever heard it. And the majority of residents was Pamela, and whoever she'd guilted into agreeing over coffee. She collected 47 signatures out of 180 households. My name appeared 3 times in the petition body, though it claimed to be about general policy. I sat at my desk that night, Lily asleep in her room, the house so quiet I could hear the power walls humming softly in the garage, and I wrote the most important letter of my life. I cited Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 33-1816, the statute that explicitly prohibits any HOA from banning solar energy devices. I cited the Federal Trade Commission's guidelines on solar access. I referenced 3 appellate cases from California, Colorado, and Florida, where HOAs had attempted similar bans and lost, paying the homeowners legal fees on top of damages. Then, I added one sentence at the bottom. Any homeowner fined under a rule that violates state law will have grounds for a lawsuit against the HOA and its officers personally. This means Pamela Stockton's personal assets, her house, her car, her bank accounts, would be on the table. I printed 180 copies and mailed them to every household with a return address label. No threats, no drama, just facts, citations, and one very clear consequence. 19 homeowners withdrew their signatures within 2 weeks. The petition stalled at 28, well short of the majority needed to amend the CC and RS. Pamela didn't take it well. She called Maricopa County Code Enforcement and reported my pergola as an unpermitted structure. An inspector named Trujillo showed up on a Wednesday afternoon. Lily was doing homework on the patio when he walked into the backyard with a clipboard. I met him at the gate, shook his hand, and handed him the building permit I'd pulled 6 months before construction. He checked the permit number against the county database on his tablet, looked at the pergola, looked at me, and said, "Everything's in order, Mr. Calloway. Have a good day." He was gone in 4 minutes. But Pamela wasn't done. An anonymous letter appeared in several mailboxes claiming I was suing the HOA, and that my lawsuit would drain community funds and raise everyone's dues. I hadn't filed any lawsuit. The letter was pure invention, designed to turn my neighbors against me before I even picked up a legal weapon. Then, Nina Solis found me. She knocked on my door on a Thursday evening, a short woman with dark eyes and the kind of tired expression that comes from fighting alone for too long. She held a manila folder, thick with papers. She fined me $500 for my cactus garden, Nina said. Called it desert debris inconsistent with community standards. I've been paying for 2 years because I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight it. Nina's folder held 14 violation notices, every one as baseless as mine. Faded paint that matched the approved color. A birdbath cited as an unauthorized water feature. A welcome mat that was oversized. I invited her in. We sat at my kitchen table, spread her papers next to mine, and realized we were looking at the same pattern painted on two different canvases. "How many others?" she asked. "At least 3 families that I know about. Maybe more." Nina set her jaw. "What are we going to do about it?" "We're going to do exactly what she doesn't expect," I said. "We're going to read the fine print. Every homeowner in Arizona has the right to inspect their HOA's financial records. It's written into statute. Section 33-1805 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. You send a written request. The board has 10 business days to produce the documents, and if they refuse, a court can compel disclosure and award attorney fees." I sent my request on a Monday. Certified mail. Return receipt. 3 weeks went by. Nothing. Pamela's excuse arrived in an email. "The association's financial records are currently undergoing a routine third-party audit. Documents will be made available upon completion." There was no audit. I checked. No accounting firm in Maricopa County had a contract with Ridgeline Estates HOA. She was stalling. I called Terrence Kimball, an HOA fraud attorney whose name came up in every Arizona homeowner forum I'd read in the past month. Kimball was the kind of lawyer who wore cowboy boots with his court suit and spoke slowly enough that every word landed like a brick. He sent a demand letter on his letterhead, the kind of letter that uses the word forthwith and means it. The records arrived 48 hours later in a cardboard box left on my porch. I spread everything across my kitchen table that Saturday night after Lily went to bed. Bank statements, check images, vendor invoices, board meeting minutes, and expense reports going back 4 years. The house was dead silent, except for the soft tick of the wall clock and the distant hum of the power walls charging in the garage. At first, the numbers looked normal. Pool maintenance, landscaping, insurance premiums, common area lighting. Then I found a line item buried on page 47 of the expense report labeled Community Infrastructure Upgrade, EV Charging Station Phase 1. The amount? $47,000. I drove through the neighborhood the next morning. Every street, every common area, every parking pad near the community center. There was no EV charging station. Not under construction, not planned, not anywhere. I traced the payment. The check was made out to Stockton Custom Builders, Wade Stockton's company. The invoice described installation of Level 2 EV charging equipment, electrical panel upgrade, and associated site work. But the address on the work order wasn't a community facility. It was 4481 Saguaro Ridge Drive, Pamela's house. Wade had billed the HOA $47,000 to install a Tesla wall connector and upgrade the electrical panel at his own home. The same panel that fed the cable running underground into my garage. I kept digging. 3 pages later, I found another line. Landscape maintenance, Desert Harmony restoration, $12,000, paid to a company called Solis Verde LLC. I looked up the business registration. The owner was Pamela's sister, Denise Archer. The maintenance was for Pamela's backyard, new pavers, a fire pit, and desert plantings around her pool. Not a penny went to common areas. Total misappropriated funds, $59,000. I sat back in my chair at 2 in the morning, laptop light washing across the papers, and felt something I hadn't felt since Claire died. Certainty. Not anger, not revenge, just the clean, cold certainty that comes when you finally see the whole picture. For 14 months, she'd been drinking my electricity. For 9 years, she'd been drinking the neighborhood's money. She'd bullied 3 families out of their homes so her husband could profit. She'd rewritten the CC and Rs without a proper vote. She'd weaponized code enforcement, fabricated violations, and filed a fraudulent petition to strip me of a right protected by state law. I picked up the phone and called Terrence Kimball. It was late, but he answered on the second ring. "We have enough," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "We have enough to end her presidency, her husband's contracting license, and very possibly her freedom. What's your timeline?" 3 weeks, I said. I want it public. The next 3 weeks were the most focused I'd been since building the solar system. First, the technical piece. I ordered a Span Smart electrical panel, a unit that lets you monitor and control every circuit in your house from an app on your phone. It replaced my standard breaker box and gave me something no conventional panel could: the ability to cut power to any individual circuit with a single tap, including the circuit Pamela's cable was tapped into. I installed it on a Saturday while Lily was at her grandmother's. Pulled the old panel, wired the new one, tested every breaker. The Span app mapped my entire house: kitchen, bedrooms, HVAC, garage, solar array, power walls, and one circuit labeled sub-panel feed, fence line. The circuit feeding Pamela's theft. I could have killed it right then. One tap and her Tesla goes dark. But that wasn't the plan. I needed her to keep charging. Every kilowatt she pulled from that point forward was another data point, another night of recorded theft, another line on the log that would bury her in court. I also clamped a current transformer on the illegal cable itself, a small sensor that recorded amperage, voltage, and power draw every 60 seconds. The data fed wirelessly into my monitoring system. I now had a forensic-grade record of exactly how much electricity she stole, time-stamped to the minute. Next came the legal strategy. Terrence Kimball and I met 3 times that week in his office on East Camelback Road. The air conditioning ran so cold the windows fogged, and he kept a jar of salted peanuts on his desk that he cracked one at a time while we talked. Kimball laid out a 3-pronged attack. Prong 1, criminal complaint. We filed with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for theft of utilities, a Class 6 felony in Arizona when the amount exceeds $1,000. I provided the smart meter data, the current transformer logs, the photos of the buried cable, and a professional cost analysis estimating total stolen electricity at $3,200. We also submitted documentation of the HOA embezzlement, $59,000 in misappropriated community funds, complete with bank records, vendor invoices, and the fake EV charging station work order. Prong 2, civil lawsuit. Kimball prepared a complaint alleging HOA fraud, selective enforcement, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional interference with property rights. The selective enforcement claim alone was devastating. I had documented 43 homes with identical violations that were never cited. Under Arizona law, an HOA that enforces rules selectively against one homeowner loses the ability to enforce those rules at all. Prong 3, the recall. Under Arizona HOA statutes, homeowners can call a special meeting with a petition signed by 25% of the membership, 45 households. We already had 62 signatures, and the number was still growing. The petition demanded a full forensic audit of HOA finances, removal of all current board members, and an emergency election. Then I reached out to the allies. I met separately with Nina Solis, Hank Prescott, the Torres family, and the Whitfields. Every household Pamela had targeted. Each one had a story. Each one had documentation. Nina had 14 baseless violation notices. The Torreses had a lien Pamela filed for a fence that was 6 inches past an imaginary setback line. The Whitfields had been threatened with foreclosure over $1,100 in disputed fines. I also made one phone call I hadn't told Kimball about. A reporter at the Arizona Republic named Carla Jessup had published a 4-part series on HOA abuse the previous year. I sent her an email with a summary of what we'd found. She called back within an hour. "How solid is the documentation?" she asked. "Bank records, camera footage, police reports, and a certified electrical analysis," I said. "When's the meeting?" "October 14th. I'll be there." The final piece was timing. The special meeting was set for a Thursday evening at the Ridgeline Community Center. Kimball confirmed the sheriff's office would have a deputy present to serve the warrant. Carla Jessup would attend as press, and I'd have my phone in my pocket with the SPAN app loaded, the sub-panel circuit highlighted, and one finger on the disconnect switch. Everything was ready. All I had to do was wait. That night, I stood in the garage and looked at the SPAN panel. Every circuit mapped, every wire accounted for, every data stream flowing into the log. Claire's system, the one she dreamed up on a hot August afternoon in a driveway that smelled like fresh asphalt, had become the most documented solar installation in Maricopa County. And somewhere on the other side of that fence, Pamela Stockton's Tesla was charging on stolen sunlight for the last time. She just didn't know it yet. Pamela found out about the recall petition on a Monday. By Tuesday morning, every homeowner in Ridgeline Estates had received an email from the HOA board, meaning from Pamela, with the subject line, "Urgent, hostile takeover attempt by disgruntled resident." The email named me directly. It called me a homeowner with a personal grudge and a history of non-compliance, who was attempting to destabilize community governance for self-serving purposes. It claimed the recall petition was legally invalid and warned that any homeowner who supported it could face assessment liability for resulting legal costs. Every word was designed to scare people into silence, And for a few days, it worked. 3 homeowners called me to say they were reconsidering their signatures. 2 others stopped returning my calls. Then Pamela sent a cease and desist letter from her personal attorney. It accused me of defamation, tortious interference with HOA governance, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter demanded I withdraw the recall petition within 7 days or face immediate litigation. Kimball read it over the phone and laughed. She spelled tortious wrong, and nothing in your petition qualifies as any of those things. This letter has the legal weight of a napkin. But the real escalation came on a Wednesday afternoon when I was 40 minutes away at a job site in Chandler. My phone buzzed with an alert from the Wise camera on my roof eave. Motion detected. I opened the app and watched the live feed in real time, standing in a parking lot with the Arizona sun burning the back of my neck. Wade Stockton was on my roof. He'd backed his white pickup truck into my driveway, extended an aluminum ladder against the south-facing eave, and climbed up with a cordless impact driver in one hand. A second man I didn't recognize was up there with him, already loosening the mounting brackets on my solar panels. Pamela stood in the driveway with her arms folded, sunglasses on, directing traffic like a foreman on a demolition site. "Take them all down," she said. "Every single one." I watched Wade wrench the first panel free from its rail. It slid sideways, teetered on the edge of the roof, and crashed onto the concrete patio below. The glass facing shattered on impact, spraying blue silicon fragments across the pavers. The second panel followed 30 seconds later, then a third, then a fourth. 4 panels. $8,400 in equipment, destroyed in under 5 minutes. I called 911 from the parking lot. Then I called Kimball. Then I drove home at exactly the speed limit because the last thing I needed was a traffic ticket undermining my credibility. By the time I arrived, Deputy Rawlings was already in my driveway. The ladder was still leaning against my house. Wade was sitting on my front steps with his hands between his knees. The second man was gone. He'd bolted when he saw the patrol car. Pamela stood near her Tesla, arms still crossed, chin raised, not a hair out of place. "These panels are in violation of HOA aesthetic standards," she told Deputy Rawlings, with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no. "As president of the Homeowners Association, I authorized their removal." Rawlings looked at my roof, then at the shattered panels on my patio, then at Pamela. "Ma'am," he said, "climbing onto another person's roof and throwing their property on the ground is not an HOA enforcement action. It's criminal damage." Wade was cited and released. Pamela wasn't arrested, not yet, but Rawlings took her statement, photographed the damage, and noted in his report that she had directed the destruction of private property under claimed HOA authority. I stood on my patio that evening and looked at the broken panels. Blue glass fragments glittered in the last light, like something beautiful that someone had decided to hate. The mounting brackets were bent. The wiring was torn loose. Claire's power plant had 4 holes in it, but every second of the destruction was recorded in high definition on 3 cameras. And every frame was already saved to my encrypted drive and uploaded to Kimball's secure server. Pamela thought she'd crippled my system. What she'd actually done was hand me a criminal damage charge on a silver platter. 12 days before the meeting. 9 days before the special meeting, Pamela filed a lien against my property. The document showed up in the Maricopa County Recorder's office. A claim for $8,500 in accumulated unpaid fines, administrative penalties, and legal recovery costs. She filed it under the HOA's name, signed it herself as board president, and recorded it without notifying me or providing an itemized breakdown. I pulled every fine I'd received in the past 14 months and laid them across my desk. Total assessed, $4,200. Of that, I'd successfully appealed $3,100 worth through written challenges that the board had never formally responded to, which, under the CC and Rs, meant the fines were dismissed by default after 30 days. The remaining $1,100 had never been voted on by the board at a properly noticed meeting, which made them unenforceable. The lien was built on nothing. Pamela had inflated the number by tacking on fake administrative fees and legal costs that didn't correspond to any invoice or board resolution. In legal terms, it was a wrongful lien, a cloud on my title that could complicate a future sale, tank my credit, and make me look like a delinquent homeowner. Here's what most people don't know about wrongful liens. In Arizona, if an HOA files a lien without proper basis, the homeowner can petition the court to release it. If the court finds the lien was filed in bad faith, the HOA, and potentially the officer who signed it, can be held liable for damages, attorney fees, and something called slander of title, which is exactly as ugly as it sounds. Kimball filed a motion to release the lien within 48 hours. He also added a slander of title claim to our civil complaint. "She's panicking," Kimball said. "People who file fake liens aren't playing offense. They're throwing sand in your eyes while they look for the exit." But Pamela wasn't looking for an exit. She was looking for allies. 5 days before the meeting, she threw a backyard barbecue and invited every household in Ridgeline Estates. The invitation called it a community unity celebration. Free burgers, free drinks, kids' activities, live country music from a speaker propped on the pool deck. The pool she'd renovated with $12,000 of HOA money. I didn't go, but Nina Solis did. Nina told me later what happened. The party started fine. Neighbors mingling, kids splashing in the pool, the smell of charcoal and mesquite floating over the fence line. Pamela worked the crowd in a white sundress, cocktail in hand, laughing too loud and hugging people she'd fined the month before. About an hour in, Pamela started making her pitch, subtle at first. Comments about outside agitators and people who don't understand how communities work. Then more direct. She told a group near the grill that the recall petition was illegal and that supporting it could expose them to personal liability. She told another group that I was planning to sue every homeowner individually. Nina waited until Pamela was standing near the dessert table, with 6 neighbors around her. Then she walked over, smiled, and asked a question loud enough for everyone to hear. "Pamela, can you explain the $47,000 listed in the budget as an EV charging station? Because I've lived here 7 years, and I've never seen one." The silence lasted 4 seconds. It felt like 40. Pamela's smile went stiff. Her cocktail hand trembled just slightly. Then she pointed at Nina and said, "You need to leave. Now." Nina left. But the question stayed. 3 neighbors texted me that night, asking what Nina was talking about. I sent each of them the same 1-page summary of the financial discrepancies. By morning, 11 more households had signed the recall petition. The night before the meeting, I sat on the back patio with Lily. The sun was dropping behind the Superstition Mountains, painting the sky in layers of copper and violet. A warm breeze carried the faint, sweet smell of saguaro blossoms from somewhere up the ridge. Lily leaned against my shoulder and asked, "Is the lady going to leave us alone after tomorrow?" I put my arm around her. "Yeah, baby, I think she is." After she went to bed, I checked everything one final time. Evidence folder backed up in 3 locations. Kimball confirmed. Sheriff confirmed. Carla Jessup confirmed. Span app loaded, subpanel circuit highlighted in red. Then Hank texted, "Pamela just hired a second lawyer. She knows something's coming." I plugged in my phone, set the alarm for 6, and went to sleep like a man who'd already made his peace with whatever tomorrow brought. The Ridgeline Community Center had never been this full. 127 homeowners packed a room built for 80. Folding chairs lined every wall. People stood 3 deep near the back. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing every face in flat, institutional white. The room smelled like cheap coffee and nervous sweat. Pamela sat at the board table up front, flanked by her new attorney and 2 board members who looked like they wanted to vanish. Fresh highlights, full makeup, white blazer, gold jewelry, the full armor of a woman who still believed she was untouchable. I sat in the 3rd row with Hank. Nina Solis was across the aisle. Carla Jessup from the Arizona Republic sat in the back corner with a notebook open. Deputy Rawlings and a second officer stood near the emergency exit, badges hidden, close enough to act. Pamela's attorney opened with a statement about the illegitimacy of the recall petition. Someone coughed. The tension was metallic, like biting foil. When the floor opened, I stood up. "My name is Garrett Calloway. I live at 4479 Saguaro Ridge Drive. I have evidence that the current HOA president has committed multiple criminal acts against this community and against me personally." Dead silence. I walked to the front and plugged my laptop into the projector. First slide, my solar system's power graph. A blue line showing normal nighttime draw. A red line, 40% higher, showing what was actually happening. Every night for 14 months, someone pulled 6 to 7 kilowatt hours from my battery system through an unauthorized connection. Second slide, the excavated PVC conduit and cable along the fence line. This cable runs from my garage to the HOA president's garage, connecting my solar system to her Tesla wall connector. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Third slide. Bank records. $47,000 from the HOA account, paid to the president's husband's company for an EV charging station. There is no charging station anywhere in this community. The work was done at her private residence. The murmur became a rumble. Fourth slide. $12,000 more paid to a company owned by her sister for landscaping at her house. Not $1 touched community property. Fifth slide. C&R's comparison. Changes highlighted in yellow. The governing documents were altered without a membership vote to expand her enforcement authority. Pamela stood. Her chair screeched against the tile. This is a smear campaign. You can't just... Sit down, Pamela. I'm not done. Her attorney pulled her arm. She shook him off but stopped talking. I took out my phone, opened the SPAN app. The sub-panel circuit glowed red on the screen. For 14 months, she charged her Tesla with my solar power. Every night. Without asking. Without paying. I held the phone up so the front rows could see. Right now, her car is in the parking lot, plugged into a portable charger running through the same stolen circuit. I tapped the screen once. 3 seconds of silence. Then a voice from the back window. The white Tesla just died. 127 heads turned toward the parking lot. Through the glass, Pamela's Model X sat under a light pole, cable still attached, dashboard dark. Deputy Rawlings stepped forward, badge now visible. Mrs. Stockton, I have a warrant for your arrest. Her face drained to the color of the lights above her. You can't do this. I'm the president of... Ma'am, you're under arrest for theft of utilities and misappropriation of HOA funds. Turn around, please. Handcuffs clicked in a room so quiet, you could hear the coffee maker dripping. Rawlings walked her down the center aisle, past 127 neighbors she'd bullied for 9 years. Wade tried to push through the back door. The second officer blocked him. Then Hank Prescott's voice, from 3 rows back. Steady, unhurried, loud enough for everyone. 9 years. Took 9 years. But she finally ran into someone who kept better records than she did. The standing ovation started in the back and rolled forward like a wave. The Maricopa County District Attorney's Office filed charges the following week. Pamela Stockton faced a Class 6 felony for theft of utilities. 14 months of stolen solar power, totaling over $3,200, and a Class 5 felony for misappropriation of HOA funds, exceeding $25,000. If convicted on both counts, she was looking at up to 2.5 years in state prison. Wade Stockton was charged separately. Criminal damage for destroying my solar panels. Conspiracy to commit theft for his role in installing the underground cable. His contractor's license was suspended pending the outcome. Their attorney tried to negotiate early. Kimball didn't budge. In the end, Pamela took a plea. 18 months of supervised probation. Full restitution of $67,000. The stolen electricity, the embezzled HOA funds, and the cost of my destroyed panels. A lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board in the state of Arizona. And one detail the judge added that wasn't in the original offer. 200 hours of community service at a Habitat for Humanity build site in South Phoenix. Wade got 2 years probation and lost his contractor's license for 3 years. Stockton Custom Builders closed its doors before the ink was dry. Here's the part that matters most. When the HOA's liability insurance company reviewed the case, they denied coverage. Pamela's actions fell outside the scope of her duties as board president. Embezzlement and utility theft aren't governance decisions. That meant the restitution came from her personal assets, her savings, her retirement, the equity in the house she'd renovated with stolen money. The recall election happened 2 weeks after the arrest. Hank Prescott was elected interim president by a vote of 112 to 6. Nina Solis took a seat on the new board. The first motion they passed was a full forensic audit of every financial transaction from the past 9 years. The audit took 3 months. When it was finished, the new board identified $23,000 in illegitimate fines collected from 14 households. Every dollar was refunded. The Torreses got back $2,800. The Whitfields got $1,900. Nina Solis got her $500 plus interest. The CC&Rs were restored to the original recorded version. Every amendment Pamela had inserted without a proper vote was struck. The new board adopted a transparency policy. Monthly financial reports posted to every homeowner, annual third-party audits, and a rule that no board member's family could hold contracts with the HOA. I used the restitution money to start something Claire would have loved. The Ridgeline Solar Share Fund launched that spring with a simple mission. Every year, 5 families in the community who couldn't afford solar panels would receive a full installation for free. No income verification paperwork, no means testing. Just a short application and a lottery drawing at the annual block party. The Torres family was the first recipient. Single mother, 4 kids, 2 jobs, electric bills that ate a fifth of her monthly income. The day the crew finished her install, she stood in her driveway looking up at those panels the same way Claire had looked at our roof 4 years earlier. She didn't say anything for a long time. She didn't need to. The Arizona Republic ran Carla Jessup's story 2 days after the arrest. It went statewide within a week. 3 other HOA communities in Maricopa County launched their own financial audits after reading it. A state legislator cited the Ridgeline case in a bill to strengthen HOA transparency requirements. The bill passed committee that fall. On the evening of the block party, after the Solar Share Fund announcement and the food and the music and the noise of neighbors actually talking to each other, Lily and I walked home along Saguaro Ridge Drive. The new panels on our roof caught the last of the sunset, glowing amber against a sky streaked with purple and gold. Lily looked up at them and stopped walking. Mom would have loved this, Dad. I put my hand on her shoulder. She's the one who started it, baby. We just finished what she began.
And that, folks, is how you lose a lake you never owned in the first place. Denise Warwick spent 8 years selling access to a lake she did not own. She collected over $600,000 in fees from 32 families. She tore out a dock that stood since 1971 and gave the space to her cousin for $1. She thought the white Escalade and the clipboard made her untouchable, but property rights do not care about your title or your attitude. They care about the deed, and Walt Redford wrote that deed in 1957 with a precision that would make the most attorneys jealous. He sold the land but kept the water in every single transaction. Sawyer did not need to shout. He opened a cedar box in his grandfather's attic and let 69 years of careful planning do the talking. The court confirmed it. The sheriff enforced it, and Sawyer turned around and created the Walt Redford Conservation Trust, giving the community better lake access than Denise ever provided. The lesson is simple. Read your deed. Know what you own. Know what you do not. Property rights do not need to expire, and they do not forget. If the story hit you, drop your HOA nightmare in the comments. Subscribe and ring that bell. Next story, the HOA president who paved over a family cemetery. The family had been there since 1803. You do not want to miss that one.